Hello everyone, my name is Halvey, and in this video we will be looking at the history of side quest chapters in Fire Emblem games. They are also known as gaiden chapters, which is what I like to call them. These are optional chapters that first appeared in FE5, then there are some in FE6 and FE7. FE8 only has one and it's mandatory. FE9 and 10 don't have any, then they came back in FE11 and 12. These gaiden chapters usually must be unlocked by meeting certain requirements in the preceding chapter. These requirements can sometimes be pretty simple, such as completing the base chapter in under a certain amount of turns. They could also be more complicated and have like a list of requirements needing to be met and can be very obscure. And I don't think that any of these requirements are ever like spelled out to you exactly in the game itself. In-game dialogue might sometimes hint towards what you have to do, but it still wouldn't be very clear. Like if you're playing one of these games blind, you'll probably unlock some gaiden chapters, but it would be very difficult to unlock them all without following one of those strategy guides from Nintendo Power or looking them up online. But the point of unlocking and doing these gaiden chapters is because they will reward you with things that you would not have gotten otherwise in the course of the game. Like most commonly, you would get additional characters that can only be recruited in the gaiden chapter, and you can also get special weapons or items. And usually they'll also expand upon the main plot of the game. Then in Awakening, gaiden chapters were kind of reworked into something new called paralogues, which are still optional chapters and still have certain conditions to unlock them. Paralogues were also in Fates, Three Houses, and Engage. The thing that makes paralogues different though is that they are, for the most part, non-linear in structure. Like in Awakening, Fates, and Engage, once you unlock them, they are available for the rest of the game and can be played at any time and in any order. Three Houses is the exception here because its paralogues can expire and they are only available during certain chapters if you met the requirements. And something that goes hand in hand with gaiden chapters and paralogues are alternate routes, where the story and gameplay will split into one of two directions, whether you are actually given the choice to follow the path you want, or the game will just set you on one of the two paths because of some underlying factors. Then the two routes will eventually converge back into single chapter progression, and when you take one route you cannot visit the other during the same playthrough, and this makes some characters exclusive to one route versus the other. Alternate routes appear in FE2 and 15, FE5, 6, 7, 8, and 12. Fates and Three Houses feature branching paths that are similar to alternate routes, except for that they never converge back together and give the games multiple endings, which is one more thing that I want to discuss here. Some games have multiple endings, and how you get these endings depends on the game. Sometimes you need to complete optional content such as gaiden chapters. It could also depend on having certain characters dead or alive, and it could also depend on your choice of alternate route, like in Fates and Three Houses. Now let's go through the game, starting with FE2 and its remake FE15, which only has one alternate route. In Act 3 of these games, you can take on the Northern Desert Battle or the Southern Desert Battle. This is simply a choice between which recruitable character you want, Dean or Sonya. Taking the Northern route will get you Sonya, and taking the Southern route will get you Dean. And I believe the game does tell you that you only need to fight one of them, but I don't know if it tells you that the other one that you didn't fight will be recruited later on. But I think in Echoes you can like go into each map, and if you don't like what you see, you can like back out of it and then go try the other route. So the game's a little flexible in that way, I believe. Next is FE3 Book 2 and its remake FE12. FE3 was the first game to have multiple endings because in Book 2, the game will end at the end of Chapter 20 if you did not find all 5 orbs and restore the Binding Shield. However, if you do restore the Binding Shield, there will be a few extra chapters for you to play and get the true ending. FE12 works the same way with getting the bad or true ending, but FE12 also has both alternate routes and gaiden chapters. The alternate routes in this game are only in the prologue, and depending on whether you answer yes or no in a couple conversations with Jagan or Katarina, you will get different playable characters for these prologue chapters only. So like in Prologue prologue 3, there will be a conversation with Jagan you'll have, and if you answer no, then for prologue 4a, you'll recruit Gordon instead of Athena, and answering yes will give you Athena for 4a, and then choosing yes would give you Athena for prologue 4b instead of Gordon. Then for the gaiden chapters, there are 2 sets of requirements to unlock them, but only one needs to be met. So for example, to unlock chapter 10x, you need to either meet the turn requirements, which is different for each difficulty mode, or have at least 3 enemy clerics survive chapter 10. You can meet both as well, but there's no benefit in doing so. These gaiden chapters in this game give you usually 1 or 2 additional characters. They all follow the same kind of like side story plot line, and then the final one, to get that, you have to have had the binding shield restored, because that'll go on to give you the true ending then. Otherwise the game will just end after chapter 20 and you will have no chance of getting chapter 20x then. FE5 has 8 gaiden chapters. The gaiden chapters in this game will mostly give you new characters, and there are some other things too, like some good items, and Lara's promotion to dancer is locked behind a gaiden chapter, and she is the only dancer in the game, so it's pretty unique for this game to have a dancer locked behind a gaiden chapter. And another cool gaiden chapter in this game is 21x, where if any of your characters were captured at any point before the end of chapter 21, you'll go to the gaiden chapter and you can re-recruit them, as they'll be locked in cells and you just have to make it through the chapter with them. It's an escape chapter, so it's like a mission to rescue your captured allies, which is pretty cool. And as far as the requirements go in this game, like most of them you should just be able to like meet without even having any knowledge of them, like completing chapter 2 here for 2x with all villages intact. I mean, most players are going to want to visit the villages anyway, so you'll likely just get that one. Like chapter 8x, like to get that one you have to capture the boss and keep him captured while you seize, I believe, which is something that is a little, you know, like who would think to do that, but the boss does start out like unmounted. He's a wyvern class, something like that, and he's unmounted though, so it's kind of telling you to, you know, maybe capture him or something like that. And FE5 also has 1 route split in chapter 15. This route split is similar to a lot of the other ones you'll see, where there are exclusive characters to each route. Sarah is the only one that's shared between these 2 routes here, and the entire goal of chapter 15 is to like escape to either the west or the east, and that chooses your path. So the player has like the option to choose which path they want to go on for this one, although if they're playing blind they wouldn't know which is better or not in the first place, so does your choice really matter in this scenario? And there's also Leaf can talk to the priest in this map as well, and that'll also give you the option to go to the A or the B route as well. FE6 has 7 gaiden chapters, 2 of which are mutually exclusive to each other because this game also has a couple alternate routes. So the cool thing about the Binding Blades gaiden chapters is that each one of them rewards the player with one of the legendary weapons, and you need to do all the gaiden chapters to unlock the true ending of the game, and none of the legendary weapons are allowed to be broken before the end of chapter 22, so you can proceed on to chapter 23, and then there's 2 more chapters after that to get the true ending. But the requirements for these gaiden chapters are that mostly for all of them a character has to be alive by that point that the gaiden chapter would be like happening, and also all but 2 of them have a turn requirement. And then for the 2 route splits, the first one is in chapter 9, and the 2 chapters after that will be different depending on which route you go. So there's a 10A, an 11A, and a 10B and an 11B. And for this one, there are 2 sets of characters that are mutually exclusive. Going the A route will get you Larum as your dancer instead of Elfin, and there's also Echidna versus Bartra. And the way to go this alternate route is whether or not you visit the top right village in chapter 9. If you visit it, you go to the B route. If you don't visit it, then you go the A route. There's like 2 houses in the right side of the map. You can only visit one of them. If you visit the left one, then the door will close on the right village and you'll just be set on the A route. And then if you visit the top right one, you'll be set on the B route and the door on the left house will close and you can't visit that. So the player has like a choice, but not really, because how are they supposed to know that that would happen if they're playing blind? And then one more thing to note is that Gonzalez will be level 11 when recruited on the B route, and he will be only level 5 on the A route. Then the other route split in this game comes after chapter 16 or 16X if you got the gaiden chapter. And then this route will last for 4 chapters plus a gaiden chapter at the end of each one. And then this is completely like a route split that you would have no choice over unless you already played the game or, looked online and found out what the requirements were for the split here. Because for this one, you either go to Ilia for the A route or Sakai for the B route. And the way that the game decides this for you is based on certain units' experience gain throughout the game so far. So for the A route, Shanna and Thea's total experience gained must be greater than or equal to Sue and Shin's total experience gained, because Shanna and Thea are your Pegasus Knights who are related to Ilia. So if you use them more, you go to the Ilia route, which makes sense. And then obviously then for the B route, Sue and Shin's total experience gained must be greater than Shanna and Thea's total experience. And again, makes sense because Sue and Shin are from Sakai, so you would go to Sakai if you're using them more. But obviously the player going in blind would have no clue that this is even a thing. So on like a first blind playthrough, you wouldn't even know that there's a route split, I don't even think. Then in both routes, you will get Nime no matter what. And then 2 exclusive characters are Juno for the A route and Dayan for the B route. And some things to note would be that experience gained by dead characters counts towards the threshold. So even if like Shanna died, her experience still would count whatever she gained up to that point before she died. And then at the very end of each route, you will get the chance to go on a gaiden chapter for one of the legendary weapons. A route will get you Maltet and B route will get you Mule Gear. But then in chapter 21, Yoder joins with whichever divine weapon that you did not get. So if you got the A route, he'll join with Mule Gear. If you did the B route, he'll join with the Maltet. Then FE7 has 9 gaiden chapters, and one of which is a gaiden chapter of a gaiden chapter. And in this game only are you given an option to proceed to a gaiden chapter if you met the conditions to unlock it. So the first gaiden chapter is in Lin mode, is 7X, and to get this one you just need to complete chapter 7 within 15 turns. And you think since Lin mode is the tutorial mode, the tutorial doesn't actually tell you the requirements to get the gaiden chapter. But if you did meet the conditions, if you completed chapter 7 in within 15 turns, then the tutorial will tell you that, hey, you unlocked a gaiden chapter, basically, but it won't tell you how you did it. It'll just tell you, you did this, congratulations. And it'll say that there's more of these that's similar to this, but good luck unlocking them. It won't, you think a tutorial would actually tell you, at least tell me what I did to unlock this one so that I know what to expect for the rest of them. Then the next ones are pretty simple to unlock. An average player will just unlock them automatically, like 13X, just visiting a village. That's something most players would do anyway. So, pretty much the only way to not unlock this is if the village gets attacked and destroyed, but the brigands are so far away that you would have to be playing really bad for that village to get destroyed. But then once we get to 19X Part 2 is the one where nobody would ever possibly probably unlock this without looking it up in a guide or online, because you need to have Nils at least level 7 by the end of chapter 10, which is Lin mode. You would have to literally grind him up to that. There's no way any average player would get him to that level by playing normally. And then you have to defeat Kishina in chapter 19 FE19X of Hector mode. And that's another thing. This is a Hector's Tale only exclusive gaiden chapter of a gaiden chapter. And defeating Kishina is no simple task because you have to do it in one turn. And unless you like grinded a unit in the arena in 17X, I mean, it's pretty tough to defeat Kishina. You need a lot of luck to do it without save states or anything like that because he has a lot of speed. So he has just a ton of avoid and he's just so hard to hit. And he has a good bit of HP too. And the reward for this chapter is, I mean, nothing too special. There's like no really good items in the chapter itself. I think there's a talisman and maybe another stat booster. But the main reward probably is just extra story content, a little more info on Nurgle's backstory, as well as Ninian and Nils. And that's kind of reward since you would have had to have played through the game multiple times already at this point. Probably, especially since it's a Hector Tale only, which is only unlocked after you beat the story once through Lynn and Elliewood mode. Then the next one for 22X or 23X, this is another one where you would have no clue how you would get it, or, you know, if you got it, you would have no idea how, because you need Hawkeye to be recruited to, which is something you would normally do. He needs to be recruited and alive, but then the party has to have gained at least 700 total experience during chapter 22/23, and this is one that normally you would do, but then you have to account for Pent being in this chapter as a green unit, and if you just let him go around killing all the enemies, then there's not much experience left for your party, and like a normal player would just let him do his thing, probably. So chances are you're not going to see this gaiden chapter unless you know what you have to do to get it. And then another interesting one is battle preparations. This one is automatically available, so there are no requirements. You'll just be offered, you know, to go to the gaiden chapter, and usually you want to say yes, of course. And this is just a chapter you have 5 turns to do shopping and prepare yourself for the like final 2 or 3 chapters of the game, because there is one more gaiden chapter as well after this one. But another interesting thing is there is a Hector exclusive character with Carla, and her recruitment already is another, like, would have to have a guide to know how to recruit her. To recruit Carla, you need to bring Bartra to the chapter, and if he's a level 5 warrior or higher, Carla will be right above the arena, and then just talk to her with Bartra, and they will fight 1 round of combat, and if they survive, she will join your party. FE7 also has 2 alternate routes, but they are only for 1 chapter each. So the first one is for chapter 23/24, Four-Fanged Offense. There is the Linus version, which is A, and the Lloyd version, which is B. And this one has 2 exclusive characters. A route will get you Geets, and B route will get you Wallace. And the requirements for this one are just, again, something that the player would have no clue of, because this has to do with the current levels of your 3 lords, Elliewood, Hector, and Lynn. If their current levels total 50 or more, you go to the A route, which will be the Linus version and get you the better character, Geets. And if they total 49 or less, you get the B route, which is the harder chapter, in my opinion, the Lloyd version, and get you the worst character in Wallace. So basically the game is punishing you for not using your lords. Although if you do get the harder version, which is the B route in my opinion, then at least chapter 27/29, which is Cog of Destiny, at least the boss of that chapter will be easier. I think Linus is probably easier to fight in that chapter over Lloyd. And then for the other alternate route, this one will be for chapter 25/27, Pale Flower of Darkness. This one, the A route, will get you Kenneth as the boss, and the B route will give you Jerem as the boss. But there are no exclusive characters for this one. You can recruit Harkin or Carol in either of them. And then Kenneth is the A route, and to unlock this one is very similar to FE6's second alternate route, where it depends on how much experience certain characters have gained throughout the game to this point. So for the Kenneth version, in the A route, your like basically magic users in Urk, Sarah, Priscilla, and Lucius, their total experience gain needs to be greater than or equal to your like kind of melee fighters in Dorcas, Barter, Guy, and Ravens total experience gained. And then like the opposite then for the B route, you know, Dorcas, Barter, Guy, and Raven's total experience gained must be greater than Urk, Sarah, Priscilla, and Lucius's total experience gained. And then some things to note about this then is that it doesn't count any experience gained by any of the characters during Lynn's tale if you did it. And then unlike FE6, dead characters count as 0 experience toward the threshold. So if you do know about the requirements here, you can just kill off characters, or you know, you have a better idea of which route you will be going. And then I like the Kenneth version of this one. I at least think it's faster to complete. The Germ version has so many like rooms that you have to go around, unlock, and you're spending a lot of time like outside where the blizzard will come and slow you down periodically. And also the Kenneth version is just a simple seas map, whereas the Germ version is a route map, I believe, and there's a ton of reinforcements if you let them come. So I always try to get the Kenneth version. Then FE8 only has one gaiden chapter and it's mandatory, and in this one you leave your main army to use a different set of characters for one map. And then also Ford and Kyle will retreat if they are defeated during this map, and they will still be available. Basically, permadeath is turned off for Ford and Kyle in this chapter. And then FE8 also features one of the biggest route splits in the series, where after chapter 8 you get to choose whether to follow Erica or Ephraim, and this is like kind of the selling point of the game. This basically lasts for mainly 6/7 chapters. Erica and Ephraim rejoin in chapter 15, but chapter 15 can still be slightly different, although it is the same map. And there are no exclusive characters that join. In Erica's route, you will just get Innis and Sala sooner, basically, than if you were to go Ephraim's route. And then in Ephraim's route, you'll just get Dusel sooner. Noel will still be recruited in chapter 15, basically in either route. And then, so basically, if you go Erica's route, you get Innis in chapter 10, I believe, and Sala in chapter 12. And then in Ephraim's route, you'll just get Innis and Sala at the start of chapter 15. They'll be with Erica at the top of the map. And then in Ephraim's route, you'll get Dusel in chapter 10. And then in Erica's route, you'll get Dusel in chapter 15. He'll be at the bottom of the map with Ephraim. And then Noel in both routes will be recruited in chapter 15 with Ephraim at the bottom of the map, no matter what. But then there are some differences in other characters that join like during both routes, but maybe in slightly different chapters. Like Larshell and Dosla will both be recruited in chapter 11 of both routes. Ewan is recruited in chapter 12 of both routes. Marissa is slightly different. She'll be recruited in chapter 10 of Erica's route and chapter 12 of Ephraim's route. Garrick and Tethys are recruited in chapter 10 of Erica's route versus chapter 13 of Ephraim's route. Cormag is recruited in chapter 13 of Erica's route and chapter 10 of Ephraim's route. Rennek will be recruited in chapter 14 of both routes. And there is actually one slight difference with Noel. In Ephraim's route, he's available from the character select screen, like battle preparations basically, so you can manage his items, versus where in Erica's route you won't have that. He'll be automatically recruited at the end of turn 2 of chapter 15. But then the main difference between the two routes though is that the Erica's route is supposedly the easier one and Ephraim's route is the harder route, and that's the general consensus, and I would agree with that. And even going with Ephraim's route will still even affect like chapter 16 after, you know, they both rejoined and the paths converge. Chapter 16 will still be slightly different, and I would say 16 is harder if you went Ephraim's route versus Erica's route. And the story is even different. Basically, Erica's more of the main character if you go her route versus Ephraim's more the main character if you go his route. One major difference I can think of is that in chapter 18, at the end of chapter 18, if you go Erica's route, she will be kind of more manipulated by Lee Leon and she'll hand him the sacred stone and he'll destroy it, versus if you go Ephraim's route, I think Leon just kind of just takes the stone and destroys it. I mean, either way, it still gets destroyed. And this is a route split that's literally right there in front of you. You can make your choice. You get to make the selection to go with Erica or Ephraim. So the player on a first playthrough would just decide to probably go with Erica. I would say, I don't know, it depends. I guess, I mean, they had more experience with Erica at that point of the game, so maybe they'll want to stick with Erica, and then it would incentivize them to play through the game a second time and go to Ephraim's route, and then even maybe play the game more after that to experience more of the routes and decide which one's better, which one is harder or easier, stuff like that. So I can really appreciate FE8 for this route split. FE11 has 5 guiding chapters, and in this game the requirements for unlocking them are a bit unconventional, as all but the final one involve having a very low amount of units in your army. So again, this is something that very bad players would probably unlock, but more experienced ones would probably not unlock unless they knew the requirements ahead of time, like they looked them up and they actually wanted to go to the guiding chapters, because the first 4 all require you to have 15 or fewer characters recruited and alive by the end of each of the root chapters. And basically these guiding chapters are just to give you an extra character since you are low on units to even unlock the guiding chapters. Although I wouldn't call these characters that you recruit like all that special. FE11 also gives you generic replacement units as well if you have very low characters recruited and alive. And then the final guidance chapter, 24X, this one is kind of given to you as kind of like a fail-safe, I guess, because it'll give you Nagi, who is like a Tiki replacement, and it will give you a weaker version of the Falchion, as the requirements to unlock this one is that Tiki was not recruited or was killed by the end of chapter 24, and Falchion was not obtained or is not in any living units inventory. So this is just given to you as a way to give you a few weapons to defeat Medius in the final chapter of the game, since trying to defeat him without Falchion is pretty tough, as well as without Tiki. There is a way to get both Tiki and Nagi and keep Falchion as well. I did it in a playthrough once. You have to get Tiki killed with Falchion in her inventory, I believe. Yeah, in chapter 24, you'd want to have Tiki get killed with the Falchion in her inventory. And then also in chapter 24, you want to have gotten the Alm Staff. And then you'll get chapter 24X to get Nagi and the weaker Falchion, and then you can use the Alm Staff to resurrect Tiki and she'll come back. FE13 has 23 paralogues in total if you include the 6 extra ones from Spot Pass. Since paralogues became kind of like the new thing starting with this game, they kind of all follow a similar structure, if you want to call it. In Awakening here, they introduced basically your villager and slash growth units in Donald. This kind of character will usually be recruited in the first paralogue, and then they also made Anna a recruitable character, and she'll be like the second character you recruit from paralogues. And then basically for the rest of the paralogues in Awakening, they all involve one of the child units. These paralogues will be unlocked if like the mother has an S support and is married, and also some other paralogues or chapters need to be unlocked in order to like, so there's a path to the paralogues, they all connect on the world map, so some could depend on stuff like that. And then the 6 Spot Pass paralogues all are required that you have chapter 25 completed, and this is a way that you can recruit some of the earlier bosses of the game that were supposed to be dead, but apparently they came back, as well as some other characters like Emerin, who was supposed to have died, but she came back, and also Priam, who is Ike's descendant, strangely enough. And also in Paralogue 17, you get Tiki, who is not really related to the children characters or anything else like that. Then Fates has 22 paralogues and 3 different routes that give it 3 different endings. Again, these paralogues, the first one will give you your villager growth unit in Mozu, and then Anna is actually a DLC character in this game. And then the rest of the paralogues though are all for the children units, and all this requires is that you have the father this time supported with an S support and is married. There are some special cases, like in Birthright for Kaze, you need to complete chapter 15 and have an A support or higher with him and Korin, otherwise he dies in that route for stupid reasons. And it's important that you have Niles for Conquest and Revelation. He has an S support and is married to a female character. So some of the children and paralogues are exclusive depending on the route you go, of course. Paralogue 7 through 14 will only be available in Birthright and Revelation, and then paralogues 15 through 22 will only be available in Conquest and Revelation. Paralogues 1 through 6 are available in all routes, and all the paralogues are available in Revelation, since that is kind of like the complete game, since all the characters are recruitable. And I would say it has kind of like the true ending, if you want to call it that. And as for the 3 different endings in Fates, that was pretty much the selling point of the game. It was kind of like a Pokemon kind of thing where they had a dual release of Birthright and Conquest, and the first 5 chapters of the game are the same no matter what route. And then in the 6th chapter of the game, you choose which route you want to go, whether you side with Hoshido and go Birthright, or side with Nor and go Conquest. And then I think it was a couple months later, Revelation was released as the 3rd and kind of like ultimate route, where you side with neither, but eventually throughout the game you recruit everybody and fight the true antagonist of the game and Aninkos. Then Three Houses has 27 paralogues, including the ones with DLC characters. These paralogues are not numbered and are only available during certain chapters and can expire. Each one will have 1 or 2 focus characters who must be alive, and during part 1 you are required to have at least one of the focus characters recruited, and during part 2 every focus character must be recruited. Then there are some special cases, being with like non-playable characters and stuff like that. Three Houses also features 4 different routes, each with a different ending, and the availability of some paralogues will depend on which route you take in the game. So for most of the paralogues, your reward is basically a battalion, as well as maybe some good items or weapons, especially like some of the heroes relics, rather most of them are obtained through paralogues. So some of the special cases were like Tales of the Red Canyon and Eternal Guardian, which focus on unrecruitable characters and do not have a recruitment requirement. Another one is Dividing the World, requires that Hilda is recruited to access it in part 1 regardless of Cyril's recruitment. Also in Maddening mode, some paralogues will have stronger enemies if they are attempted in any chapter after they are first available. And finally, Engage has 15 paralogues in the base game, and then there are 6 divine paralogues which are all DLC. And like in Fates and Awakening, this first paralogue will give you Jean, who is your villager growth unit, and then the next paralogue will give you Anna, and then the rest of the paralogues in the base game here are related to the emblems. Each emblem will have a paralogue that is a remake of one of the chapters from their games, and then the reward is that you can unlock the emblems bond levels 11 through 20, and then the final paralogue gives you the pact ring, which is what unlocks your avatar's S supports basically. And of course the DLC paralogues, the divine paralogues, will give you a DLC emblem as your reward. Pretty simple stuff there. And the requirements for these paralogues are probably the most simple, as they will just be unlocked after you complete regular chapters and you'll just appear on the world map. Even the divine paralogues, you must first complete the first one, the Ancestor, and then the other ones will be unlocked when they were released and if you gave Nintendo more money. So what do you all think of gaiden chapters, paralogues, alternate routes, and stuff like that? I think they're pretty alright, especially in the earlier days where requirements for unlocking them were very strange, and multiple players could have different experiences and stuff like that. And with all that said, this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed it, like, comment, subscribe, and have a great rest of your day.